Alright, so we in the last video we did basic diffuse texturing, and I'm going to try to move on to the normal mapping, and I'm going to do this as quickly as possible so I can fit all of my videos into something that we can use here. So I'm going to start by desaturating all the layers, and I'm going to keep everything basically in a separate layer so that it makes it a little easier for me later to differentiate if I wanted to make normals different. I know some people might flatten it, and I'm gonna save a copy of this before I do all of this. It's a good thing to save. Anyway, so some people might flatten it and actually use the selection and do it that way, but I'm just gonna go and do it this way. Desaturate it, and I like to use, for this purpose, I'm gonna use the levels and just kind of do this real quick and dirty again. The key with normals is getting a good blend of light and dark, but also getting a good transition. If you make things a little too hard and a little too dark and a little too different or whatever, it's just not going to really come out that well. For instance, I've got rust stains coming out right now that I don't want to be kind of normal. So what I might do before I actually do this, I'm actually going to highlight just on my window section first. And I'm going to do normal mapping on that. So I'm going to change the layering just on this first, so that I can get kind of a nice crisp look that I want here, and then I can kind of change the rest of this, and there we go. And then I'm going to I just use the normal mapping in Gimp, and I've downloaded some, what is it, normal map plugin that you can get. So and I'm going to change, and you're going to have to again mess around and experiment with all of these different options and filter types. I found that the Sorbel sometimes works well and sometimes it doesn't. So the next thing I want to do is invert this selection, and I'm actually going to make this entirely 50% gray. And in order to do that, actually I don't want to do that because there's kind of grooves and stuff I want to show up. So I'm actually going to go back to the level button, and I'm just going to level this out manually again, and hopefully try to keep some of those dark lines in there so that we can kind of get a little bit of normal mapping on the door. Something kind of like this. And I actually might go through here with the paintbrush or the airbrush and white out some of the rust stains, because I do not want those to show up as dense or something, really. I mean, I'm going to keep a little bit there for that, but you know, for the general purpose of this, those are just kind of rust stains. They're not really indentions or anything. So some of these other dots and divots I'll leave there, and maybe lighten some of this up a little bit, but for the general purpose, I kind of don't want any of this down here to be. There we go. Okay. So anyway, so now I'm going to go ahead and do my quick normal map, and let's see how that turns out. And I'm actually going to turn this down, because again, these are going to be really small divots that don't need to be extremely tough. So as you can see, I put it real light. You can barely see those. And that's kind of what I wanted anyway. Alright, so the next thing we'll do is just keep moving down these layers. Keep moving down these layers here and trying to... What do we got here? Oh, we got the windows. Cool. And just doing the same thing. Desaturating and changing the levels until they're dark light. And it's going to take practice and kind of getting used to how the normal maps work and how you do it specifically, but I've been getting a better and better gist of how this stuff works as I move along. And it's very important that you mess with this scale and you also change your filter types. I found that the Sorbel will give you crisp, but it kind of looks fake sometimes in game, so you kind of want to watch out for that. Anyways, I just noticed they popped out at me, so I'm going to invert this so that they actually pop in. I don't want these windows to pop out at me. I want them to be inset, just like that. Move on to the door. And it's also important to note that you should get really as good quality textures as you possibly can, because that will also present you some big issues if you've got some really sketchy textures. I always try to start with as big as textures as you can get, and I know a lot of people use different websites to get them, and if you make them yourself, more power to you, because that's badass. But I cannot make them as well as I can just put them together like I'm doing now. So just make sure that when you do get your textures that you're trying to make them as you're trying to get them as large as you can. That will help, and especially when you scale, you can't kind of recreate pixels, but you can definitely downscale them or make the images smaller and not have as much of a degradation to the quality of it. So that's again something that, I mean, I'm sure everyone that's been around computers and images knows, but that's something to definitely keep in mind, and it's going to really turn a good quality asset into a bad quality asset if you don't really think about those things. So that one, I didn't like how deep it was, so I'm actually going to try to see if I can change the value of the scale and make those just a little deeper. And as you can see, the more drastic this looks, the more scary it scares. So I try not to make it too drastic, but that looks like we got some poopy results up here, but again, we'll see kind of how that looks. So now we'll do the bricks, which are kind of important because they're going to be really looked at. So I want to make sure that these have good contrast here. Not too much, but just a little extra, a little boost there before we start doing the levels. Again, I don't really like those super dark lines, so I'm going to kind of back up on this one and see if I can get those lines to kind of go away. I don't know how I can do that. Because again, I want this brick to have grooves, but not too deep. So I might do the output here and change this a little, change this a little. See, I'm not liking this. We want this to be, I think I might want to invert this and see how that works. Huh. That looks kind of funky. Let's see what this does here. Let's change this to 1. Let's really see what this does. Okay, well, it kind of recesses them. I don't know. That looks a little much. So let's go back, but let's actually darken this. Let's see if we can make this a little dark or whatever. We'll go invert this again. Let's see how this looks. Okay, that kind of looks more of how I'm thinking it should look. Okay. So I'm going to do those. I'm going to up that just a little bit, the effect a little bit by making these a little brighter, and then the cracks just a little darker here. So there's more of a gap in between that light dark gap, and that should make it a little more pronounced, I believe, without having to change this too much. I'm actually going to give this a 0.1 or something and see what that does. So cool. I think I like that a little better. I get a little more lines in here, and I kind of see a little more divots and shit. So alright, so let's go to our last piece, which is the roof. And again, this is kind of an important one, and what I would want to do on this one is actually I might duplicate this a couple times and multiply it and see if that will give these lines a little more. I think I like that, so I'm going to merge that together alone. And you know what I did actually, in how I messed this up, is I actually combined the grunge layer, and I should have left that alone because now we've got these real dark splotches, and that's going to cause some problems here. It's going to cause some problems when we do our normal map, and actually it's going to make this normal mapping kind of a pain in the ass. So what I might do is, let's do this real quickly here, is we might actually just hand do these. If I can do this real quick, I might be able to do it and just kind of copy and paste the lines. Actually, yeah, let's see here. Because to do this correctly, you just want to be real close to these. Well, so far through it, I'm just going to go ahead and bear through this. And again, my apologies, but this is kind of what I was talking about. I'm very new at this, and I hope you guys can forgive me for making me draw lines on this stupid texture for a couple minutes here. Feel free to skip through all this crap that I'm talking about. And I don't know if you know this, but in Gimp, if you hold shift and hold control, you can do these cool lines. It took me a long time to realize I can do this. A lot of scratching my head wondering what the fuck am I supposed to do with this, and it took me a while before I learned Google is your friend and Google how to use Gimp and stuff. So once I read the manual and kind of realized what the tools were, I was kind of amazed. Okay, so we're almost done with this shit, so we can just do the normal mapping. Alright, so let's leave that layer alone. Actually, let's auto crop it. And what I'm going to do is overlay this, I think, because if we overlay it... Actually, you know what? I'm not going to overlay it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hide this real quick. Hide the black layer so you can see this. What's going on here? Why is that disappearing on me? Oh, because it's on overlay mode, duh. Let's move this back to normal. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to fill the background of this layer with like a flat gray so that it actually comes in flat. And so what I'm going to do is use the color picker and then just invert my selection and then just fill that with a flat gray. And then so when we actually do our normal map, that hopefully will be a little easier. So now we can, I don't know why this isn't, yeah, just leave that alone. So what I'm going to do is also blur this. I read that gives it a little bit more of a stepping ability, so it doesn't get all fucking weird. You get better normal maps, I guess. And as you can see, we got some normal maps going on here. So I want these to be kind of like, you know, indentions, but I think that's a little heavy for just the top. So I'm actually going to take this down to like 0.15 or something. That's not light. That's not heavy enough. So let's do 0.25 and call it good. Call it a day. All right. So the same manner as I'm going to go ahead and actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and desaturate this part. Actually, I'm going to make this flat gray. And then do the normal map on that so that's even. Alright, so now we've got our normal map. I'm going to export this. And I just realized I didn't actually, before we move the diffuse over, I actually did not change that over into a 512 by 512. So one thing we want to do now is actually go to our image and scale this image down to 512. So it's game ready, and then we can export this to our desktop. I'm going to change this to N for normal map. Export, export. Okay, and then what I'm going to do now is actually go back to 1024. I'm going to throw in our diffuse, put that on top, and actually rescale this down again. So now we're game ready, because we actually UV'd everything in 512, so everything has to be in 512. Yes, I'm going to replace that. And I'm going to Control Undo, and then we can actually just leave this at the bottom here in case we want that later. And so now we're going to test this sucker, and we're going to try to test this out in game. And what I'll have to do is actually cut this right now so that we can load up the game and check it out. So when I come back, we will hopefully have the asset editor up and running. Okay, actually I lied. I'm going to throw the diffuse texture that we made back into Blender so that we can actually double check everything as far as the UV orientation and make sure all that stuff was working out correctly. So one thing I wanted to talk about before we go into that is actually the back over here on the main menu tab, we're going to see a couple important options called the Material tab and the Texture tab. In City Skylines you can only have one material, and basically you make one texture. So making all these extra tabs and stuff like that for these are going to be pointless. But what I'm going to do is actually go into object mode, which I am in, and I'm going to delete this material and actually add a new one. And it doesn't matter what you do over here, because I mean, it might look good in Blender if that's what you want, but in game none of this stuff is going to carry over. But we're going to go over to your texture, click new, and what we want to do is add the image or add our diffuse texture that we made in Gimp. So we're going to go to this image button and click open, and we're going to go to our desktop and actually select the diffuse image that we made, and you'll see that pop up right here. Now what we're going to do is we want to apply this to our model. We've just loaded it in Blender. We haven't done anything else. So what we want to do next is in edit mode, I don't know why, but in edit mode, well, with everything selected, you can go ahead and close this down. We're going to go ahead and apply our diffuse texture. And so we're going to see that here. It's all applied and it's all good on this thing. And in order for us to see this on our model, we're going to go over to this little circle thing here and actually click over to texture. And so now we're going to see our model with the texture that we just made. And everything is somewhat okay, I guess. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things that just look like just dog shit on this, but again, I'm not going to spend too much time on making this perfect because of just the whole tutorial purposes here is just to kind of teach you all how to fucking put the stuff into the game, not necessarily how to be great texture artists. As you can tell, I am not that good, but what you can do is just kind of move these around on your UV side, and you can kind of get that to match up maybe a little better with what you might want it to have here. So we'll kind of spend some time and do that real quick. And I think this is going to make it look just a little better, but not by much. As I keep saying, never claimed to be a very great texture guy, so forgive me. Anyways, doing this stuff before throwing it in game is actually probably a little more time saving, because it takes a while, especially if you've got assets, and you can disable them so that you can load the game a little quicker, but if you've got a lot of assets, it's going to take a while. So I kind of just double check things here in Blender. Like these things right here need to go away. That looks absolutely like crap. So we're going to actually shrink these. Rotate that. Kind of move that so that it's got kind of the similar feel there. Same thing with that. This is completely... We're just going to unwrap that again, and notice how it just kind of redid that, and we're just going to kind of reposition it where we want it. Try to scale it so it matches up a little bit. Alright, so these pieces, for whatever reason, are just like, I don't know, man, they got some weird, shrink those up. I don't like those stains on there. Just want it white. I'm gonna have to leave that one there for a minute. So anyways, shrink these out. Alright, so anyways, let's flip this around. This texture is not right. So let's flip this. Oop. Let's flip this on the x-axis. What we're going to do is move this up. Move this out. Move this over. Okay, cool. So now what we can do is start duplicating these items that we want to duplicate. So I'm actually going to move this over a couple spaces here. Duplicate this. Okay, and then we got, actually that's going to be too close. So let's move this up here. Go to front view so we can center our view here, and let's duplicate one to the left, one to the right. Squeeze these in here. Alright, so we just basically duplicated, and now you can see what I mean with the UVs. We don't have to re-UV everything. We can just kind of duplicate all these windows. And if I guess I could have just copied these here and duplicate these for these sides too, but we'll do some rotation here. So we'll kind of just move these out, rotate these on the Z-axis a couple times. Make sure let's go into side view mode here, make sure we're in the right kind of dimensions here, and we'll just kind of duplicate this a couple times down here on these axes. And it looks like we'll have to stretch these over a little bit. Okay, so now let's move these right up to the wall here. Alright, so you can't really tell, see behind that, and let's go ahead and duplicate these again for the other side. I'm keeping an eye out for the tri-count. Looks like we're doing pretty good there, so we'll just slide these over here, rotate them again, and then let's get close and make sure we got this as close as we can. Alright, and so what we'll do is do the same thing here with these garages, and let's kind of think about this here, and I'm going to go ahead and add maybe one over here, maybe one over here. Alright, and so what I'm going to do also is I'm going to duplicate another door. I think I'm going to spice this building up a little bit, and we'll make another door over here. And maybe this time we'll put this in the middle of the building. And then we'll go ahead and duplicate some of these windows. Just drop them right down here. And since again we're doing okay on try, let's go ahead and add a couple more windows to the back side. Again, hitting Control 1 to get to this back view. Go ahead and duplicate these windows here. And we'll go ahead and slide these again right up onto the wall as close as we can. You know what, I'm going to stretch these out or slide these out. So what you can do here is if you hit grab, scale X, all in a row, GSX, you can actually move these out. I want to see how that looks and see if we can kind of change a little bit how this looks there on the top level. So we'll do that same fashion, just kind of stretch it out about the same way. And I don't think it looks too bad. I think it looks okay. So another thing, since again we're doing good on tries, I want to kind of make a little ledge over on these window seals, and I'm going to hit the line button, and I'm going to go ahead and click a line, and I want to snap the cursor here, and I want to add a cube, and I'm going to shrink this cube down as real small, just big enough for like a window ledge or something like that. Go ahead and slide this out. Do the same thing in this direction, but I'm going to slide this all the way across, just like that. Alright, so now we've got to put this actually on the UV map, and I'm going to add this just to some same textures that we already have. I'm going to click this and add this section here, then we're going to go ahead and unwrap this. Smart UV project here, and I don't need this to be at all detailed or anything, so what I'm going to do is shrink it real small and just stack it kind of on a section that I think would fit, and it could be anywhere on your map. I'm using this garage door for the white part. You can kind of see how that works out here. So now what I'm going to do is just duplicate this and go all the way on the other side. And so if you're in this position where you don't need to see these UVs, you can hit Shift Tab on the section you want to see. And now I can just kind of focus in on the modeling part right now. So we're going to move this over here, drop it down. Kind of do the same thing that we did, kind of make kind of a little lip here. Grab that and move it down the x-axis. Alright, so we're going to do this one more time, or a couple more times, just for the top section here, so we can be nice and uniform. Rotate that, and to be honest, it doesn't matter what way you rotate it at this point. Keep that in line here. Kind of move this to the side. Grab this face, G, Y, and then move this all the way down. Okay, so now we'll duplicate this on the other side of this wall and call this good. So now we've kind of added accents to these walls, and if you want, we can even drop this down and duplicate this. Again, we're pretty decent on tries. Just keep adding these accents kind of around the walls here. So I'm going to do one Actually, for some reason, the heck happened there? I guess I didn't grab the entire thing. I only grabbed faces, so I just undoed a couple times, and then let's do this one more time. Here we go. Okay, so I'm gonna duplicate this. I'm gonna grab these faces and scale them in though. And I'm gonna scale them on the X or Y axis, just like that, so we don't have to mess around too much with the piece here. We can kind of reposition this ledge a little bit. Well, since we did this door, I guess we got to do this one. Alright, so now we got this little garage building, and one thing I wanted to do up here with the roof is this looks like crap, so what we want to do is kind of maybe flip these UVs around and see if we can fix this a little bit. Alright, I think that looks a little better. We can put some props here and hide this splotch. I don't really like all this junk here, so let's fix that too. Just make that white. I'm just shrinking these UVs by hitting S and kind of moving them by pressing G on the texture map here. Like I said, I kind of don't want this to have all those splotches all over the place, so I'm kind of scaling this so I can just see the white, or get the white part of this texture. Kind of remove some of those spots. Outside I'm going to have to keep them. Alright, so this is kind of the building here, and so we've got everything kind of tested out here in Blender, and the last step is to kind of do the exportation here. That's kind of another important piece, so we'll export this. The first thing we want to do is do a thing called apply or transform, and you can only do this in object mode, but what this does is it resets everything that we've done for scaling, and it redistances everything and remeasures, and it makes everything nice when we export it. In Blender, you want to be in object mode and hit Control and hit A and do rotation and scale and click everything. So now we're all good on that piece, and the next step is to click our model and go to File, Export, FBX. I'm going to export to the desktop and scroll to the top here and click Selected Objects, change the scale to 100, apply the transform and the modifiers, and you can get rid of leaf bones. I'm not sure what that does, but I don't think you ever need that. And that's it, and then hit export. I apologize, there is one important piece. Make sure that your FBX is actually labeled correctly. So we're going to just do this tutorial, undercase .fbx, and so we're going to put that back out there on the desktop, and if I export, everything's the same here. Alright, so the next step is we'll go ahead and load up a a new asset editor and kind of load this thing in there with the diffuse and normal mapping and kind of see how it looks.